Have you ever wondered what drives someone to abandon everything they know and venture into the unforgiving wilderness alone? Today, we're diving deep into one of the most captivating and controversial true stories ever told, Jon Krakauer's masterpiece Into the Wild. This isn't just another adventure tale, it's a profound exploration of human nature, freedom, and the ultimate price of following your dreams to their absolute limit. What makes this story so compelling is that it actually happened. A brilliant young man named Christopher McCandless walked away from a privileged life, donated his savings to charity, and disappeared into the Alaskan wilderness. What he discovered there would challenge everything we think we know about success, happiness, and what it truly means to be alive. Krakauer doesn't just tell us what happened, he takes us on a journey through McCandless's mind, revealing the complex motivations behind his radical choices. Through meticulous research and powerful storytelling, we get an intimate look at a young man's quest for authenticity in a world he saw as corrupted by materialism and conformity. This book has sparked countless debates about idealism versus reality, the call of the wild versus the bonds of family, and whether McCandless was a heroic free spirit or a reckless fool. But perhaps that's exactly why it resonates so deeply with readers across generations. Into the Wild forces us to confront uncomfortable questions about our own lives, our relationships, and the compromises we make every day. It's a story that will stay with you long after you turn the final page, challenging you to examine what really matters in your own existence. Jon Krakauer's Into the Wild stands as one of the most compelling works of narrative non-fiction in modern literature. Published in 1996, this extraordinary book emerged from Krakauer's initial article for Outside magazine, where he first encountered the mysterious case of Christopher McCandless. What began as a magazine piece evolved into a comprehensive exploration of a young man's radical rejection of conventional society and his ultimate fate in the Alaskan wilderness. The book represents Krakauer's attempt to understand McCandless not as a simple cautionary tale, but as a complex individual whose choices reflected deeper questions about American society, family relationships, and the human search for meaning. Drawing from McCandless's own journals, letters, and photographs, as well as extensive interviews with people who encountered him during his journey, Krakauer constructs a nuanced portrait that resists easy categorization. Into the Wild operates on multiple levels simultaneously. It serves as a gripping adventure story, a psychological character study, and a philosophical meditation on the tension between civilization and wilderness. Krakauer brings his own mountaineering experience and understanding of risk-taking to the narrative, creating parallels between McCandless's story and his own youthful adventures that nearly cost him his life. The book's structure mirrors a detective story, with Krakauer gradually revealing the circumstances that led McCandless to abandon his comfortable existence and eventually die alone in an abandoned bus in Alaska. Through this methodical approach, readers experience the same process of discovery that Krakauer underwent during his research, making the revelations about McCandless's motivations and ultimate fate all the more powerful and emotionally resonant. Into the Wild tells the true story of Christopher Johnson McCandless, a 24-year-old Emory University graduate who abandoned his privileged life in 1990 to embark on a transcendental journey across America. McCandless donated his $24,000 savings to charity, destroyed his identification documents, and set out to live deliberately according to the philosophical principles he'd absorbed from authors like Henry David Thoreau and Jack London. The narrative follows McCandless as he adopts the name Alexander Supertramp and travels through the American West, working seasonal jobs and forming brief but meaningful connections with various people he encounters. His ultimate destination is Alaska, where he hopes to live off the land in complete solitude and discover what he believes to be authentic existence, free from the corrupting influences of modern society. McCandless's journey takes him through diverse landscapes and communities, from the wheat fields of South Dakota to the Colorado River Rapids, where he nearly dies in a kayaking accident. Each stop reveals more about his character and his growing determination to reach Alaska and test himself against the wilderness. The story reaches its climax when McCandless finally arrives in Alaska and takes up residence in an abandoned Fairbanks city bus along the Stampede Trail. Initially, he thrives in this harsh environment, hunting game and living according to his philosophical ideals. However, as winter approaches and his situation becomes increasingly precarious, McCandless discovers that his romantic notions of wilderness living clash brutally with reality. The book's most haunting sections describe McCandless's gradual realization that his isolation has become a trap rather than liberation, and his unsuccessful attempts to return to civilization before ultimately succumbing to starvation in the abandoned bus that became his final refuge. The transformation of Christopher McCandless from privileged college graduate to wilderness wanderer began with his graduation from Emory University in the spring of 1990. Despite his academic success and his parents' expectations for his future, McCandless felt increasingly alienated from what he perceived as the meaningless materialism of American society. His discovery of his father's secret previous marriage and the lies surrounding his family's history provided the final catalyst for his radical departure from conventional life. McCandless's rejection of his former identity was thorough and deliberate. He donated his entire savings of $24,000 to Oxfam, abandoned his car in a Nevada flash flood, and began living as Alexander Supertramp. This transformation represented more than a simple name change. It embodied his complete rejection of the social expectations and family connections that had previously defined his existence. The Western Odyssey that followed revealed McCandless's complex character through his interactions with various people he encountered. In South Dakota, he worked alongside Wayne Westerberg, a grain elevator operator who became one of his closest friends. Their relationship demonstrated McCandless's ability to form genuine connections despite his desire for solitude. Similarly, his time with Ron Franz, an elderly man who developed paternal feelings toward him, showed both McCandless's capacity for inspiring deep affection and his ultimate inability to accept the emotional ties that such relationships created. McCandless's near-death experience, while attempting to navigate the Colorado River in a kayak, marked a crucial turning point in his journey. The incident revealed both his courage and his dangerous tendency toward reckless behavior. Rather than deterring him from his ultimate goal, this brush with death seemed to strengthen his resolve to reach Alaska and test himself against even greater challenges. The philosophical foundation of McCandless's quest drew heavily from the transcendentalist writers whose works he carried with him throughout his journey. Authors like Thoreau, Emerson, and Tolstoy provided the intellectual framework for his rejection of materialism and his belief in the transformative power of wilderness experience. However, Krakauer suggests that McCandless's interpretation of these authors was often superficial, focusing on their call for simplicity, while ignoring their warnings about the dangers of complete isolation. McCandless's arrival in Alaska in April 1992 represented the culmination of his 2-year journey toward what he believed would be spiritual enlightenment through wilderness living. His initial success in hunting and surviving in the harsh environment seemed to validate his philosophical convictions. He established himself in an abandoned Fairbanks city bus that served as shelter and recorded his experiences in a journal that would later provide crucial insights into his final months. The gradual deterioration of McCandless's situation revealed the fatal flaws in his preparation and philosophy. His inadequate knowledge of edible plants, his insufficient supplies, and his lack of backup plans combined to create an increasingly desperate situation. The irony of his predicament became apparent when he attempted to leave the wilderness but found the Teklanika River too swollen to cross safely, trapping him in the location he had sought as liberation. The final weeks of McCandless's life, as revealed through his journal entries and photographs, showed a young man coming to terms with the consequences of his choices. His realization that happiness is only meaningful when shared with others represented a profound shift in his thinking. But this epiphany came too late to save him from the fate his isolation had created. The pursuit of authenticity requires careful balance between idealism and practical wisdom. McCandless's story demonstrates that while the desire to live according to one's principles is admirable, completely rejecting the accumulated knowledge and support systems of civilization can lead to dangerous consequences. True authenticity involves integrating personal values with practical understanding of the world's realities. Family relationships, despite their complexities and imperfections, provide essential emotional grounding that cannot be easily replaced. McCandless's rejection of his family connections, while understandable given his discoveries about his father's deception, ultimately left him without the support network that might have helped him survive his wilderness ordeal. The book suggests that healing damaged relationships may be more beneficial than severing them entirely. The romanticization of wilderness and solitude can blind us to the genuine risks and challenges of such experiences. McCandless's literary influences, while inspiring, provided an incomplete picture of what survival in the wilderness actually requires. The gap between intellectual understanding and practical experience proved fatal in his case. Preparation and knowledge are crucial elements of any challenging endeavour, regardless of philosophical motivations. McCandless's lack of adequate preparation, including his insufficient knowledge of edible plants and absence of proper equipment, turned what might have been a transformative experience into a death trap. Passion and determination, while important, cannot substitute for careful planning and skill development. The human need for connection and community is fundamental to psychological well-being. McCandless's final realization that happiness must be shared reveals the essential truth that complete isolation, regardless of its philosophical justification, runs counter to basic human nature. Even the most independent individuals require some form of meaningful connection with others. The tension between individual freedom and social responsibility creates complex moral questions without easy answers. McCandless's choices affected not only himself, but also the people who cared about him, raising questions about whether complete personal freedom is ethical when it causes pain to others. The book explores this dilemma without providing simple solutions. Risk-taking and adventure can provide valuable personal growth experiences, but they must be balanced against potential consequences. McCandless's journey included moments of genuine insight and self-discovery, suggesting that controlled risk-taking can be beneficial. However, his story also demonstrates how the pursuit of extreme experiences can cross the line from beneficial challenge to unnecessary danger. The search for meaning and purpose in life is a universal human drive that deserves respect, even when it leads to controversial choices. While McCandless's methods were flawed, his underlying desire to find authentic meaning in his existence represents a struggle that many people face. His story encourages readers to examine their own values and priorities. Literature and philosophy, while providing valuable insights, must be balanced with practical experience and wisdom. McCandless's heavy reliance on transcendentalist writers gave him intellectual framework, but insufficient practical guidance. The book suggests that true wisdom comes from combining philosophical insight with real-world experience. The legacy of extreme choices extends beyond the individual to influence others who learn from their story. McCandless's fate serves as both inspiration and warning, demonstrating how individual stories can become powerful teaching tools that help others navigate their own challenges and decisions more wisely. Into the Wild endures as a powerful and provocative work because it refuses to provide easy answers to the complex questions it raises. Jon Krakauer's masterful storytelling transforms what could have been a simple cautionary tale into a nuanced exploration of human nature, family dynamics, and the eternal tension between freedom and responsibility. The book's lasting impact lies not in its judgment of McCandless's choices, but in its ability to make readers examine their own lives and values. Christopher McCandless's story resonates across generations because it speaks to fundamental questions about authenticity, meaning, and the price of following one's convictions to their logical conclusion. His journey represents both the nobility and the danger of refusing to compromise one's ideals, creating a narrative that is simultaneously inspiring and tragic. The book challenges readers to consider whether McCandless was a heroic free spirit or a reckless idealist, while suggesting that the truth encompasses elements of both characterizations. Krakauer's achievement lies in his ability to present McCandless's story with empathy and understanding, while acknowledging the real consequences of his choices. The book serves as a mirror that reflects our own desires for adventure, authenticity, and meaning, while warning us about the potential costs of pursuing these desires without adequate preparation or consideration for others. Into the Wild ultimately suggests that the most meaningful life might be found not in complete isolation or total conformity, but in the careful balance between individual authenticity and meaningful connection with others.